I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies, and today I want to look at leveling your bow. And when I say that, the scope and the sight. So even if you're shooting recurve, you need to have this sight level, because there's two screws here on the side of the sight. And unless you've got this level, as you move back in distance or forward in distance, your sights are going to move from left to right. Now you can simply see if this is the case by shooting at 10 meters and then walking back to 70 meters and seeing if your groups move left to right on the target. The other thing is, if you shoot downhill, so you're shooting downhill, you want to make sure your sight is level if you're shooting a scope, because otherwise you'll shoot left or right on the target, same as shooting up and downhill. So I want to show you basically how I do this, and we're going to see how bad my sight is basically set up at the moment. So the first before we used to do this, because I come from an old school, what we used to do is put a bow up against a level like door hinge, like so. So given this post is square, you put a level up against it, you would then put your bow up against that, and then you check to see the spirit level. So basically I've got my bow up against, I put the bow up against here, up against the hinges of the bow, and then I check my spirit level. And my spirit level is nowhere near the center, not even close. So that would tend to tell me I've got a problem. So you're saying, why haven't you checked your bow, Stephen? I thought I did, but it's part of a live video. Now there's a whole bunch of tools brought out to assist you in doing this leveling system. There's tools which allow you to completely rotate your bow to check your levels, which I thought I had done. Maybe I've done on my other site, but anyway. Now there's a whole bunch of tools by Brite Site Archery, and that's what I want to show you. So Brite Site Archery have brought out 3 tools to level your sight. One is this, it's called the third level axis. I'm going to show you how to use it. The next one is this level here. You attach this to your sight to see if it's level. Basically it just bolts on with a screw on the side to see if the sight's level itself. Then you've got this thing here. This attaches to the string to see if the string's level. So we're going to do these one at a time. We're going to see how these react to my bow. First one we're going to fit on is we're going to fit this to the string. Now rough sort of prices on this stuff. I think this is about 30. There's cheap plastic versions available as well, or expensive plastic versions, whichever you choose. So this simply just clips on. It's a magnetic system to hold it on the string. So I'm going to show you how that holds on, like so. Now on a number of bows, this string will not be level, and there's a number of reasons for that. If you're shooting a single cam bow, the thickness on the limb, thickness on the cam at the top is different to the thickness at the bottom. If your bow is not shimmed the same top and bottom, then this string will not be level. So you've got to make sure that string's level, but I'm going to assume that my bow is level. So I'm going to line up the spirit level with that. Stop moving. And then we're going to check the spirit level in my scope. It's actually pretty close, like incredibly close. But you'll notice it wasn't on the pillar. It was so far out, it was crazy. But actually it's really close to the string level. So that gets me thinking, when I probably first set up this sight, I did the string level. So I would have put the plastic clip on the string and then paired off the scope to it. Now the other thing you've got to watch is if this scope is up or down, as far as this here is tilted, then you can actually tilt the scope to make it all horizontal, but that's not going to assist you if this bar here is tilted at an angle. So that brings in our second tool, this little red thing here. This simply bolts onto the sight. That's simple. Now I'm going to put this in front of the camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So what we're looking for here, I'm going to move this up. There's a spirit level there. Cool. Now it's in the middle. There. And you can see my spirit levels off to the side here. That's pretty similar to what we saw on the wall. So once again, I'm going to put this on the string, and we're going to check the position of this. So if I line up the string, make the string square. So make the string square, the little red one is off to the side and my scope's way off to the side. So my bow's not looking good at the moment. So there goes $35 broken. No, it actually isn't. Let's just check that. No, it's still good. So it can withstand a 1 meter drop, the little spirit level. So that brings us to the third part of the equipment. This is the third axis level. It's got a little spirit level here, which you first off get that level. This is a 90-degree angle. You can see it's bolted on. This here, this little knob on the side, allows you to rotate the sight, so you can simulate up or down hills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt the sight onto here, and then we're going to set up the sight on this here, then transfer it back to the bow, and hopefully it's all level. So let's do that. Okay, so first thing is I've bolted the sight onto the third axis adjustment. Now I put the sight into the bracket. I'm just going to tighten that straight up. Now what I want to check is the spirit level is level down the bottom first. Then I want to check the yellow sight housing, the rod that runs down, is level. So I want to then check the red thing to ensure that is lined up square. Then after I've lined that up square through adjusting the 2 screws, I then want to check my sight. So it's got to be done in order. So first off, we check to make sure the sight housing is dead. The Brite Site thing is completely square. And we basically just adjust this little red knob on the side here to do that. I actually know my sight bar is not level, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen that off. I'm going to level that up. Now to start off with, I'm only adjusting the top one to try and get the adjustment, because if I adjust both the screws, it might be too sloppy. So I'm hoping that I'll just get enough adjustment with the first. And I don't. Okay, so now I've adjusted this sight bar here. So I've adjusted this sight bar here to make it level. And you can see in the photo that the spirit level is now dead in the center. So both spirit levels are dead in the center. So now what I do is I look at my scope and I check with the position of the bubble. And you'll see the bubble is off center. The bubble is not dead straight. So what I want to do now is I want to adjust the scope so the scope's in the center, and I've got to move the scope down. So to do that, it depends on the actual sight. On the Excel sight, you've got 2 little screws on the inside here, to do that. So we're going to just move those down a little bit. And to do that, I take the sight bar off to expose these 2 screws. And I want to move my scope down. Now I'm doing this when my scope is completely level. We're going to do the third axis, which is left like that for shooting up and down hills next. So at the moment we're just doing it where everything's perfectly level. Actually too floppy, it flops around too much. So I need to actually increase the tension there a little bit. So I've just tightened up one of the two screws a little bit, so I'm hopefully just going to apply a bit of tension. You kind of want it to be finger tight. Back in the old days, we didn't have these third axis, and we actually bent the rod on the scope to make everything level. So I'm just going to bend that down till my scope, until the bubble on the scope is dead in the center. Now the other way you can do this, if the bubble on your scope has got adjustment, you can actually move the bubble on your scope. This scope has got that ability. Now that's basically finger tight. Now I basically take it off and I'm going to tighten up both those screws, and then we're going to recheck it. So right now I've got all three bubbles. The bubble on the side, the bubble on the housing, and the bubble on in the scope being all lined up. So that's actually great for me. Now what I want to do is I want to check the third axis adjustment. So I want to simulate aiming up a hill, I want to simulate aiming down a hill. The way I do that is I loosen this bolt to the side here, and I'd move the sight downwards, like so. And you can see now the angle of the bubble is spot on, and then we move it up. Now if it's spot on aiming downwards, it should be spot on aiming up. So we move the sight up at an angle, and then we check the spirit level again. See, upwards the spirit level is not exactly correct. It's a little bit out, but going down it looked pretty good. So if it's out by a little bit. Now to adjust your third axis, this is your third axis just there. And that moves your scope in or out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that. We just reset everything to make sure everything's perfect. Everything's perfect. So in the upward position, my scope was just a little bit out, and that's going to be adjusted by these two screws here at the bottom. Those two, so we're going to loosen both of those just a smidge. Put the bubble so it's spot on in the middle. So I'm shooting recurve in the state championship a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago. And I noticed my 60 meter sight setting, when I shot 60 meters, my arrows were on the left hand side of the target, and when I shot close on the right hand side. So I was like, damn, I hadn't checked this before the tournament. And I was running neck and neck with the guy who was winning, like there was only 5 points in it. So at the longer distances, I'm aiming off the target to basically adjust for my sight being square. Now, it could have been that, or it could have been tilting my bow, but this is one of the factors you want to take off. So now my spirit bubble is dead in the middle. And so now I reset everything back to the start, and I make sure everything is spot on. So I check the 3 bubbles and they're spot on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the sight back to the bow, and then we're going to recheck and check everything. And if everything is spot on, I'm done. Everything's all set up, and with that I can go and shoot some arrows, which I really need to do. So let's just bolt this back on the bow, and hopefully everything just lines straight back up. Okay, so I've got my bow sights bolted back onto the bow, and I'll just move my sight in the position where I had it before. So one of the problems with a PSE, you've got multiple sight positions where you can actually mount your sight. Now that's not the case with a Hoyt or like Matthews. PSE, you can actually move your sight up and down and give you more adjustment. So make sure when you take your sight off a PSE bow that you put it back onto the correct sight holes. I can't remember where I had it. I'm just hoping it was one up, so otherwise my sights will be wrong or I have to just readjust it. But anyway, it makes, for me, it's an improvement. Basically, I prefer to have adjustment there on the bow. So we're going to just put that up against the sight. Now what's interesting, so this little red one's dead in the middle. The little red one's dead in the middle. The scope is fractionally off on that side, but it's not by much. So now the string level last time was out. So what we're going to do is reattach the string level. And the moment of truth. So I line up the string level. And when I line up the string level, the scope is spot on. So now when I line up the string level, I line up the string level is now spot on. I'll try and line this all up. What I'll do is I'll put it on the ground because that's probably easier. I'll take photos of it all lined up. When I line up this string level, the sight's now in line and my scope's in line, so everything's spot on. So now that whole process with these tools probably took me 15 to 20 minutes to get it all set up. Now without the tools, it's a much bigger process because you might have issues with the cams being aligned, you might have different thickness cams. It's a little bit fiddly to get the 3rd axis without that tool. Now the problem you're going to suggest is, well, I'm only going to use these tools once when I've got my bow. So maybe the club buys these tools and then club members can use them. I don't know. I was hesitant to buy these tools. Now saying that, why was I hesitant? Because I've actually brought them before and I lend them to people and they don't come back. So I was like, I can shoot perfectly fine without them. So, and with saying that I can shoot perfectly fine without them, it's always a little bugbear that when you're shooting field archery, when you're making big distances, your arrows will move left to right on the target. Or when you're aiming your bow, basically you feel like the bow's tilted left or right, when now you've got that reassurance. Now the cost of these tools, there are cheaper versions on the market from $5 to $20. The cost of the Brite Site tools I think is around 35 Australian dollars for the 2 little components, the one that goes onto your sight, the one that goes onto your string, the 3rd axis thing to do your sight. I think that's about 140 Australian dollars. So I'm going to guess it's about 90 American dollars. Now, if you're shooting tournaments, it's probably worth having. And I'm just thinking about how much it costs to get takeaway. It's definitely worth having. And I should have had it before now, and I should have had that reassurance that when I set up a site, that everything's done. And I should have had it in the shop also, so when I set up target sites for people, it's done. And I suppose that for an archery shop, if you're setting up sites for people and you're going to spend 20 minutes doing it, then it's probably reasonable that you charge for that service of doing the 3rd axis and all that sort of stuff. because on a top-end target site like the XL, the profit margins are not great. And you're going to say, well, you're a rich archery dealer. On a $500, $680 site, the dealer is making less than 10%. The margins are extremely tight because competition is huge between different manufacturers, between the internet and all that sort of stuff. It's just driven profits completely down. So in my opinion, it's perfectly reasonable for an archery shop to charge you for these other services, or you buy the tools and do them yourself. So I hope that's been useful. It's been useful for me because now my bows, I feel like I'm confident in it, and now I'm going to go and shoot it even though it's dark and I want to go and sleep. But I've got to go and shoot. So I've got to go and shoot arrows. So I'm Stephen Ham from Archery Supplies. I hope that's been useful. And that's Brite Site stuff. The guy who runs Brite Site, Mike, a really nice person. I've known him for 30, close to 30 years. A really nice, honest, always talk to you, comes from New Jersey, love the New Jersey accent. Yeah, really nice product, nice person, nice family and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, good product. And I think the pricing is more than reasonable, and all his products from Brite Site have always been more than reasonable. So check them out at your local archery shop. They're pretty much everywhere. And if your dealer doesn't have them, just ask him to get them. It's not hard for a dealer to buy off Brite Site and then get them to you. Rather than you buying off Brite Site, if you ask your dealers, can you get me these things? Your dealer should be able to get them because he's very easy to get stuff out of. He's very quick to ship. So give it a go. The Brite Site stuff. There's his little light logo there. And yeah, good American company. Thanks for watching. Bye.